You want to play a game?
Man, do I.
It's called the couples game. That's actually fun. But we played it just the other night and I'm like,
Played it. We wrote down our answers
well,
on our
that's how you do the
whiteboards.
game.
Yep.
So I thought the title was a little bit misleading, but it was
It
fun.
wasn't actually fun.
Well, it was, but
Let's
it
find
just
out.
just seemed like it was going to be a little more woohoo.
What's the best dinner you've ever had together? Okay.
I just wrote.
Three, two,
Two,
one. Okay. Lake Elmo Inn.
Mhm.
Tell us about Lake Elmo Inn.
Was that after our first? No, we had gotten a gift certificate from all the parents. We took a bunch of ninth graders out to Colorado for
Right, I
a
forgot about
trip.
that one.
And when we got back, the parents gave us, was that from the parents?
It must have been because we weren't going to pay
didn't,
for it.
we couldn't pay for that.
Yeah.
But it was my first like 4-course meal, and they gave you sorbet.
Oh yeah, there
and
was sorbet
a hot
between
napkin.
to cleanse the palates.
That
for
was
the
year
next-
one.
Was year one or year two?
Well, I'm
It
just
was.
saying.
It was a long time
It
ago.
was a long time.
Over 20. It was
Time
at least
to go.
25 years
So
ago.
I think it's time to go to another place.
Mine was Murray's in Minneapolis. That was also, I think,
Anniversary.
but I can't remember which. But that's been in the last 10 years.
What did you like about that?
Murray's does the, I think it's called it's like the silver butter knife steak or something. It's like a steak that you're supposed to be able to cut with a butter knife, and it was really, really good. Like
That was a moody place. I remember that was dark
it was dark velvet,
and moody.
velvet booths and such. It was great. Loved it.
So we're back, and I got to tell my story a little bit about my struggle with comparison last week. And I am going to be a great listener this week because I said if I get to have that chance, I think it's just as fair to have Brian have his chance to share about the topic of comparison and your thoughts on it.
So last week you were talking about, for you, it was like 2 lies and a truth about comparison, right? And something that you really struggle with. My title is Comparison When You Don't Struggle with Comparison. And so for me, comparisons are really, it's different for me because of, I think we all compare to an extent. And I actually think all of us, like, we're predisposed, maybe not predisposed, but there might be a default struggle or default sin that's like easy for us to go to. Comparison, I really had to think about because that's not.
You're like, I don't compare to anything.
It's not so much that, like, I don't compare to the typical things. I think that's it. Like, I don't compare. If somebody's got a bigger the house than me, I'm like, my house is plenty big. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't compare too much. I don't feel that in me.
Can I ask you a question?
Much? Sure.
When you were younger, because you're into sports, like, and as an athlete, did you struggle with comparison as an athlete?
Yeah.
Did you compare yourself to other classmates, but also your brother?
Yeah, good question. It actually, that's the first time I've thought about that, but it actually fits in with what I was going to talk about because as I look back at that, I went to a small school. My brother was 4 years older than me. And so I wanted to be like my brother. He was a good basketball player, good baseball player, those types of things. But there was enough of an age gap that there wasn't really like a sibling rivalry. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't compare to him in the sense of like, oh, he's better than me, those types of things. I went to a smaller school. So like basketball and baseball, I was either the best or one of the best, like in my grade and those types of things. Baseball, I wasn't the best, but I was. Yeah, there was. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like I compared, oh, is that person better than me? But similarly to the thing that I'll talk about here in a moment, the enemy's really smart because though comparison, like how you compare and struggle with that comparison of like, oh, I should be at this point or I'm there. The enemy's really smart. If he doesn't get you in a certain way, he's going to twist something and try to get you another way. And so my comparison isn't like, I don't think I measure up or those types of things in these cases. It's pride. And so if I look back at being a high school athlete and then even a college athlete, it wasn't that I compared to others. It's like a worry about, not a worry, but a struggle with pride that can easily seep in and just be like, pretty good. Like, you got to figure it out. And so for me, as
that's a whole different vein.
it's a different track.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I think because the enemy is subtle and the enemy is smart, he's going to be like, "Okay, I can't get you there, but I'll get you here." I was home a couple of weeks ago and spent actually some time with my brother on an ATV, and we were chatting about pride and those types of things, and we were talking about comparison. He was talking about comparison in like farming and stuff like that, and I was talking about what we had chatted about for this. And the thing that I said was, I don't struggle when somebody's like, "Yeah, I'm making $1 million." I'm like, "Great. How's your family? Have you blown up your family?" And so like quickly my pride comes in, like, "Yeah, but look how the Rocks do it with their family. Their kids are doing good, they're whatever." And again, the enemy is subtle. So he's not going to get me with comparison, but he's going to turn me to pride and be like, "Oh, you're actually better than that person in this way." And that is more subtle, maybe more insidious, because it's harder to detect. Maybe like it's harder for me to see it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and two, like I was just thinking about when you go down that road, everything can blow up on you as well. Like it's like if that's what you're saying, hey, but look at how we're doing it, or look at like when you're saying, look at our family. Well, that could change in a heartbeat too.
Totally, yeah. So like in that moment, because I'm basing how I feel about myself on how good our family's doing. Well, yeah, what happens when one of us makes a mistake or the girls start struggling or whatever? Like that is also just human, and it can crumble.
Well, then it goes to, because that's a whole nother topic of it, just performance of like, oh, we're successful because of X, Y, Z.
Right.
And this is how,
Yeah. So it's not performance in the sense of, hey, I run this Fortune 500 company. It's, yeah, that's awesome. I run this family that's doing great. And when I say great, I'm just like, we're fine. We're not special, but we're also like, yeah, it's just a different thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've got a verse for us from the book of Mark. Comes from chapter 7. And Jesus is talking here, and he says, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of a man comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. And so notice that Jesus, like, he lists off kind of these things that are wicked and evil and defile, and pride's in there. And pride, I think, is such a, again, it can be a shadow, it can be something that's hard to detect, but it's important enough that Jesus puts it in that list with sensuality and sexual sin and those types of things. It's like, well, throw pride into that mix, because pride essentially is saying, God, if I let that go, I don't need you at some point. Like, I'm God.
How does your view on comparison, but even like you were talking about pride, how does that impact our marriage and just your relationship with Christ?
Yeah. I think for a marriage, again, it can impact it because, in a way, if I'm not intentional, with pride creeping in, me thinking that we're fine and we're good, the way that if that pride comes in, then that keeps me from actually pursuing you or being intentional with our relationship and just being like, we're golden, man. I've sat with so many guys as a pastor who are just like, yeah, my marriage blew up, and I stopped paying attention to her 5 years ago. And now, like, of course it blew up. And so I think that pride comes in, and that can come in for different reasons. For me, it would be pride. It wouldn't be like, probably wouldn't be overwork or looking at something else. It would be pride, just thinking we're good. And so that could really be dangerous. I think one of the ways that can also affect my relationship with Jesus is similar to how it affects with you, where I can just get into the monotony of my relationship with Jesus. Oh, I listen to my
Complacency.
Bible app. Yeah, complacency is the right word, probably. And then when that pride seeps in, probably the biggest thing that could be damaging is then I'm not ruthless with my sin.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, we're good.
Mhm.
So I'm going to let that, oh, I looked at Instagram, I saw a girl or something, like
Mhm.
I lingered on something on the internet, and I'm not ruthless with that. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm good. Like, we're
Mhm.
still good. And so anything like that that comes in between, like, again, the enemy's smart, and he's trying to
Mhm.
drive a wedge between you and Jesus. And so if I'm complacent, I'm not going to step forward. That pride can lead me to that, I
Mhm.
guess.
Mhm.
So for you guys, this week, maybe have a conversation with your spouse. Okay, do you struggle with, like we talked about last week, with
Mhm.
comparison of, boy, I wish we were at a different spot, or comparison with how I look, or those types of things?
Mhm.
Or do you resonate with what I'm talking about as far as comparison? Not really comparison, but more like leading to pride. And in that sense, can lead to complacency. So maybe neither of those resonate with you.
Yeah, maybe not.
Who knows? We don't have any idea.
No, no, these are just our issues that we're just sharing.
Just for us.
All right, bye.